Hey guys, today we are going to be talking about the Ikea Symfonisk Lamp Gen 2. And this is a collaboration between Ikea and Sonos. I skipped the whole Lamp Gen 1 because I didn't like the way it looks, but for the Lamp Gen 2, it actually looks pretty nice, except that what you're looking at now has no lamp shade. And I'll explain why in just a little bit. So upfront summary, before you get on to the rest of my video, no time to stay around, no problem. I'll just tell you that the Ikea Symfonisk Lamp Gen 2, they are actually a pretty decent Sonos speaker. The sound is pretty okay. It is not as loud as some of the other speakers like the Play ones or the ones or even the Bookshelf, but it actually throws a larger soundstage. Now, if you have time to stay around, do stay around, and I will talk to you more about what I feel about this lampshade-less Ikea Symfonisk Lamp Gen 2. So the Lamp Gen 1 was launched in the year of 2019, and in 2021, 2 years later, they launched the Lamp Gen 2. And I kind of liked how it looked, so I went down to the local Ikea store. I shopped around and looked around. They didn't have many on display. Well, in fact, they didn't have any on display. It was just boxed up in the carton, so I couldn't actually see it in the flesh, but I knew I wanted to get them already. So I was looking high and low, and I couldn't find the lamp shade. So apparently, according to Ikea, they have not brought in the lamp shade yet. So if I were to buy this, I will have to be using this particular lamp without a lamp shade. And which is why the two lamps in front of you here are looking a little bit naked. There's no glass lampshade, which is an option, or the fabric lampshade, which is a cheaper option, but they just look naked. So I went online on the Ikea store and I checked, as you can see here, and none of them are in stock. Neither the glass version nor the fabric version are in stock in all three Ikea stores in the small island of Singapore. Yeah, Singapore is pretty small, but it has 3 Ikea stores, beat that. But it's okay, coming from where I am, I'm actually interested in this lamps as a speaker first and foremost, not so much as a lamp. So what you can see here, I have screwed on 2 light bulbs. I'll talk about the light bulbs in a little bit. This light bulb I'm using here, this is the older E-light and that's the newer E-light. They are smart lights. Ikea on its own does not make the light on the Sonos lamp smart. So you can't actually control these lamps, turning them on and off via the Sonos app. Neither can you turn them on via the Ikea Home Smart app. But by screwing in the E-lights, I can actually control them maybe in a different way. It could be Google, it could be, oh, hey Google, or any lamp of your choice for that matter. You can use Siri. Now I won't go into that, but today what we are here for is whether this particular speaker, the speaker part of this lamp at least, is worthy of a place within the Sonos ecosystem. So as I explained earlier, I skipped the whole Lamp Gen 1 because I didn't like the aesthetics of how it looks. It had a bass and it had the volume control and the play button as well, and the on-off switch for the whole lamp was actually a rotary dial, and it has been changed to just an on-off switch, just a clickable button right here in front of the lamp. Now, other notable things is that the socket is now a E27 socket, which is probably a lot easier to buy a smart lamp or any other lamp for that matter to fit into this E27 socket. The previous one was the E14 socket, which is 14 millimeters in diameter at the threaded base, so not that common light bulb fitment. And E27 is a lot more common. And I've also noticed that the fabric that is covering this particular lamp here is actually a lot nicer. It's a lot classier looking and definitely feels a lot more premium than the previous one, which was a little bit coarser. This one is a little bit finer and it feels actually slightly more premium. And the shape, as you can tell from here, the sides of this cylindrical shape is actually straighter and it's not as curved and bulgy as the previous version. All in all, I do find this to be aesthetically a lot more pleasing than the old one. I chose them in white because if I were to be using them as surround speakers, this probably blends in a lot better with the other pieces of furniture, especially if I were to put them by the bedside or a table by the side of the sofa or the couch. couch that you're going to be placing them on? Well, it's arguable because it really depends on the color scheme of your house and the color of your furniture that you're going to be placing and matching them on. I just chose white, also because primarily it comes out better on the whole camera if I'm going to be talking about them over YouTube. Now, on the base of it, you get 4, I think, silicone studs, and they hold very well. The lamp doesn't slide around at all, so it's very, very nice. The cable that is provided, the power cable, is a braided power cable, so very nicely made braided power cable as well. It's about 2 meters in length, and it is right angled so that you can plug it in, and you can see that it's actually quite flush. There's also an Ethernet jack should you want to jack it up to your LAN rather than going through Wi-Fi. On its own, this is actually Wi-Fi capable. So all in all, I like the aesthetics of this. Now, I can't just talk about the Ikea Symfonisk lamp without talking about the alternatives, or rather its peers when it comes to buying a speaker at this particular price range. Now, slightly cheaper on the lower end of the Ikea Symfonisk range, we have the bookshelf, and this is the bookshelf that I have here. They cost $99 US. I can't pull them anymore because it's power cable. Let me shift them a little bit. Okay, so this Ikea Symfonisk bookshelf, it's standing quite tall, as you can see. Its Sonos One will come up to be about this height, and this is the whole bookshelf. You can actually mount them horizontally this way, where they have rubber studs at the bottom as well, or you can mount them vertically and it goes into a bookshelf. It's a little bit tall for some bookshelves. Some of the bookshelves I can't actually fit them in, but it is what it is. It's called a bookshelf speaker. You can also actually mount them using the wall brackets that Ikea now sells. Now, Ikea has come up with a couple of more options for mounting this guy, including a floor stand, which is pretty nice. And the front grille is actually removable, and you can actually change how it looks. And hidden behind the bookshelf, you will see a driver, a small bass driver, as well as almost a 1-inch tweeter. And the buttons are there, the play and the plus minus for volume control. The new Gen 2, this is a Gen 1 bookshelf. There's a new Gen 2, which I don't know what other tweaks there are, but the buttons have been placed a little bit differently, and they are grouping both the plus and minus for volume control together rather than separated by the play pause button in the middle. Right, so let me just put it back. Now, this is $99, and in a previous video that I've made, which I will try to link up here, you will notice that I find this tremendous value. Now, if you have spent money on the Sonos Beam or the Sonos Arc and you want that surround, previously your only option, before the introduction of the bookshelf, your only option was to buy the Sonos One SL, and that was almost the cheapest. I mean, of course, you could buy them used, or you could even buy the Play ones used, like the ones that I'm using for my Sonos Beam. I'm actually using the Play ones, and between the Play ones and the Sonos ones, there is sonically very, very little difference. Again, I've made a video of that. If you are not sure which one to go for and you have an option to save some money, I would say go for the Play ones if you don't mind the difference in the aesthetics, and the sound delivered is probably pretty similar. Now, the Ikea Symfonisk Bookshelf, they actually are loud. They do sound great, and at $99, it represents tremendous value as an addition to your Sonos Beam or your Sonos Arc or your whole home theater setup, even if you're using the Play Bass or the Play Bar or even the Sonos Amp. Now, 99 times 2 is $198, and that is still coming in cheaper than a single Sonos One SL. So the bookshelf used to be the most cost-effective way to actually add surrounds into your setup. Now, even if they were a little bit more expensive, I would say that they are still worthy addition, because the sound in surround sound configuration actually does sound pretty good, as opposed to the Sonos One. I actually suspect they sound a little bit louder in the surround sound configuration as your surround speaker. Now, then I have to talk about the Sonos Lamp. So in this particular generation, the Sonos Lamp comes in at $141, and this is just for the base. So you have to add on the lamp, you have to add on the lampshade, and it will come out to be about $190 US or so. And when you compare that with your Sonos One SL, right, which is $199, you kind of like are getting almost the same thing, except that you've got a free lamp fixture thrown in. So it acts as the lamp fixture as well. But it does take up quite a bit more space than a Sonos One or the 1SL. When you compare the Sonos 1SL, fair comparison, because the Ikea Symfonisk Lamp Gen 1 or Gen 2 or any of the Symfonisk range of speakers do not have voice assistants. So they have no mics and they are not smart speakers. Well, not smart speaker in the sense that you can't interact with it, but it could be smart in other ways. Well, it's streaming all your stuff online. That's pretty smart. So if you wanted to compare with the Sonos One, the non-SL version, the one with the mic, then that is $219 after the price bump somewhere towards the end of last year. Then this is coming in at a lower price. And on top of that, you get the free lamp. So isn't that quite a sweet deal? Now, one thing I have to point out, the difference between the Ikea Symfonisk Lamp Gen 2 and the Lamp Gen 1 is that the Lamp Gen 1 was slightly more directional. It was throwing sound towards the front, right? It's a narrow cone of sound that is throwing out. For the Lamp Gen 2, apparently it covers a wider soundstage. So it's touted to have a 180-degree kind of sound view. When you are listening to it on its own, you can shift a little bit and the sound still stays pretty consistent, all right? I mean, of course, if you walk behind the speaker, then it's going to sound all muddled up, but it's the same as that for the Sonos One. Now, when you compare to the Sonos One also has the same configuration that is throwing out sound to the front. So in terms of coverage, in terms of the soundstage width, you're going to get a better soundstage with the Ikea Symfonisk Lamp Gen 2, all right, specifically Gen 2. So if you want to put these to surround sound duties, actually, I do think that they will serve the purpose actually even better than the Sonos One, except that it is not as loud. Now, in a lot of my videos, I really go in depth into all these kind of measurements as well. And when I am exploring speakers, now I bought these speakers about a week ago, but I have to spend time to actually measure them, to listen to them, to get familiar with them so I can tell you more about these speakers. Now, I've done some frequency sweeps. Now, if you check out the frequency sweeps, I'm going to be pulling them up. I hope I can fit them up maybe here and I can talk about them. So for baseline comparison, I'm going to be pulling up the frequency response sweep for the Sonos Play 1 first. So this is the orange curve. Now, if you look at the orange curve, well, it is what it is. I have a few markers here, right? So what a frequency sweep does is that it will measure the speaker's response and output based on all the way from 20 Hertz to 20 kilohertz. At least that's what I'm measuring. And it measures the output from there. So when you see a curve and it is, say, flat, you will know that it is actually throwing out the same amount of sound regardless of the frequency. So that makes for a great speaker. If you see something that's dipping downwards, like in this particular case, the 20 Hertz is lower, the 20 kilohertz is lower, it means to say that the speaker is actually reaching its limits in producing those frequencies, and you aren't actually going to be hearing much at those frequency extremes. Now, not many speakers will be able to produce down to 20 Hertz. In fact, short of a subwoofer, you're probably not going to be hitting 20 Hertz. Now, 20 kilohertz, similarly, it takes a very, very good pair, very high-end pair of speakers to actually hit a flat response all the way up to 20 kilohertz. And for most intents and purposes, as humans, we don't really hear very well at the extremes already. 20 Hertz, you could probably feel it, maybe don't hear it as much. And at 20 kilohertz, I do believe at my age, I can't hear much of 20 kilohertz anyway. So looking at the orange curve, let's use this as the baseline. All right, so I will be throwing up another baseline for you, which is the Ikea Symfonisk Bookshelf, right? This is the Gen 1 bookshelf. I don't know whether there's a sonic difference between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2, but they look the same. The drivers look the same. I would believe that they roughly perform similar. Now, the bookshelf is represented by a red line here. If you look at the red line as compared to the orange curve, you'll see that the bookshelf is actually sounding a lot louder, right? And it peaks out at 99 decibels as opposed to 98 decibels on the Play 1. It's not going to be a huge difference, but if you base on the frequency response, say below 150 Hertz or so, you'll see that the red line is actually performing a lot better. In fact, if you look at the whole curve, the difference between the bookshelf Gen 1 represented by the red curve as well as the Play 1 represented by the orange curve, you'll see that the red curve is actually sitting a lot louder, well, not a lot, just a little bit louder than the Play 1s, except the frequency range just above 5 kilohertz. Now, If it is difficult to read, then just take it from me that based on the measurement, the bookshelf is actually a much louder speaker than the Sonos Play ones for $99 versus twice the price. So that's why I always say that the bookshelves, they are tremendous value. Now I'm going to use this as the baseline, right? Because you might be considering whether you should buy the bookshelf or the Ikea Symfonisk Lamp Gen 2. Or you might be thinking, should I spring for a Sonos 1 or the Sonos Play 1 or the Ikea Symfonisk Lamp Gen 2? So I'm going to be pulling up the green curve here. Now the green curve is representing the Lamp Gen 2. And straight away you will notice that, hey, actually the Lamp Gen 2 below 100 Hertz or so actually performs and holds up quite well. Now, towards the 20 Hertz range, you'll see that actually the Gen 2, the Lamp Gen 2 is actually performing a lot better, but I would say take that with a pinch of salt because at that frequency range, none of these speakers are going to be producing much sound that is actually audible to your ears. So ignore that for a little bit. And if you look at the whole rest of the chart, above 100 Hertz, all the way up to the kilohertz and even up to 20 kilohertz, they are pretty similar in performance. A little bit of differences here and there, but both the red and the green curve, which is the bookshelf Gen 1 and the Lamp Gen 2, actually perform better in the bass department below 100 Hertz than the Sonos Play ones. Now, with these marginal differences being observed here, I'm going to say that for the purpose of music, for the purpose of you pairing them up as surround to your home theater system, they're not going to sound very different. The advantage that the Ikea Symfonisk Lamp Gen 2 will give you in the whole setup is that it has a wider sweet spot because the cones are arranged, or rather the sound is actually engineered to throw out a larger sound stage. So if you like something discreet and if you like something that helps you cover a bigger area in your room in the surround sound environment, then I guess that the Ikea Symfonisk lamps, they're going to make for a pretty good choice. And on top of that, you still get your free light fixture. In terms of volume though, because of the fact that it's being dispersed out a little bit more, it's going to sound a little bit softer, right, throughout the whole range. And that is shown by the 96 dB maximum output, just maybe a little bit lower on the frequency range, closer to 100 Hertz, as opposed to the peaks of 99 decibels for the bookshelf Gen 1, which is at about 150 Hertz, and the Play ones, which is 98 dB, peaking out about 180 Hertz or so. So the Ikea Symfonisk Lamp Gen 2, it is a mouthful, isn't it? So the lamp, okay, the lamp is going to be a little bit softer. It is not going to be as loud as your Play ones, and definitely not going to be as loud as the bookshelves themselves. They do perform the duty to spread out sound a little bit better. So in conclusion, you've got to ask yourself a couple of things. If you're going to be wanting to spend the kind of money anyway at $190, $170, $190, $200, then I would say that this makes for a pretty wise investment. You're going to get something a lot better looking, but it's going to be a lot bigger. And plus the lampshade, when I do get the lampshade, it's going to stand up and tower over the Play ones or the Sonos ones. If you are out for some space savings, then I would say that the Sonos Play ones or the Sonos ones, they still represent pretty good option because they are the most compact, all right, of the lot. Is about half the height of the bookshelves, and is definitely about half the height and half the size even of the whole lamp setup here. But if you're out for pure sound quality, not volume, sound quality, I would say that actually the lamps can actually perform pretty well in a surround sound setup. If you're out for pure volume, then no-brainer, the bookshelf is the one to get because it is the loudest. Now, not only that, it is also the cheapest option. So if you are really wanting to get and enjoy surround sound in your setup for a budget, then I would say go for the bookshelves. The lamp, not so, because it's going to get pricey, it's going to get big, but it does make for a very interesting piece of furniture, and it melts into your background. It blends into your background very well. People are going to be coming in and say, well, that is a lamp, isn't it? Well, it is a lamp, plus it is also a Sonos speaker. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I'll see you very soon in my next video, where I will be talking about the picture frame. You can see the picture frame, it is actually melting into the background. I think I chose black because my walls are darkish gray. Maybe not that great a choice for YouTube, but it is coming up. I'll see you in that video very soon.